Layla Mwend walked out of her office in Nairobi with a small box in her hands, a few pens, her coffee mug, and the framed photo of her parents that used to sit on her desk. The office behind her buzzed with whispers and forced smiles. People were trying to act normal, but everyone knew what had just happened. The company was downsizing, and Layla's name was on the list. She had worked there for 7 years. She'd given her best ideas, long nights, and countless weekends. But none of that mattered. One short meeting, one polite, "We appreciate your service," and it was over. When she got home, she expected comfort, maybe even a small hug or a simple, "We'll get through this." Instead, Khalid looked up from his phone and asked, "So what now? Are you going to sit around doing nothing while I handle the bills?" Layla froze. She tried to explain that she just needed time to think, to figure things out. But he cut her off. "You've become useless, Layla. Maybe focus on cooking or something." The words hit harder than the layoff. She laughed nervously at first, thinking he was joking. He wasn't. That night, Layla lay awake beside him, staring at the ceiling while the city hummed outside. The word useless echoed in her mind over and over. It stung, but deep inside, something else began to stir. A small, quiet fire she didn't yet understand. The first few weeks after losing her job felt endless for Layla. Every morning, she woke up early, made coffee, and sat by her laptop, determined to start fresh. She updated her CV, rewrote cover letters, and applied for job after job. At first, she felt hopeful, but as days turned into weeks and weeks into months, rejection emails became her new routine. Some companies never even replied. Still, she tried to stay strong. She told herself that this was just a rough patch. But deep down, the silence was heavy. Khalid didn't make things easier. He'd come home, scroll through his phone, and make snide comments like, "Any luck today?" Or, maybe the job market isn't the problem. Every word chipped away at her confidence. During those long, lonely days at home, Layla started noticing something. The little grocery shop downstairs had a Facebook page with 2 followers. Her neighbor, who sold handmade jewelry, didn't even have one. Everywhere she looked, small businesses were struggling to keep up in a digital world they didn't understand. One afternoon, her friend Aisha visited. She owned a small boutique, but complained that sales were dropping. Layla offered to help her set up an Instagram page. They took pictures of clothes by the window, wrote catchy captions, and posted them with hashtags. Within a week, Aisha called, screaming with excitement. Her sales had doubled. That one call changed everything for Layla. She sat there, phone in hand, her mind racing. If one simple page could help one small business grow, what if she could help hundreds, thousands? What if she built something, a platform, that gave small African businesses the tools to advertise online, easily and affordably? The thought gave her a rush she hadn't felt in months. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about purpose. For the first time since losing her job, she felt alive. That evening, when Khalid came home, she shared her idea, her eyes bright with excitement. "I've been thinking," she said, "what if I start a digital marketing platform to help small businesses get noticed online?" I already helped Aisha, and it worked. Khalid looked up slowly, smirking. "You? Start a business? You couldn't even keep your job, Layla. Don't waste your time." His laughter filled the room, sharp and dismissive. For a moment, she felt the old sting of humiliation rise in her chest. But this time, something was different. Instead of arguing, she simply smiled, a small, quiet smile. She didn't need his belief anymore. Deep inside, she knew she was onto something. She just had to prove it, not to him, but to herself. The days in Layla's house started to follow the same rhythm. Khalid would come home from work, shower, eat dinner, and then head out again to meet his friends. He'd return late, smelling of beer and cigarettes, while Layla pretended to be asleep. But once he was gone, she'd sit up, open her old phone, and start watching YouTube tutorials. At first, she barely understood what she was looking at. Videos about website design, coding basics, and social media algorithms. But every night, she learned a little more. She took notes, practiced, failed, tried again. Some nights her eyes burned from staring at the screen, but she pushed through. It wasn't just curiosity anymore. It was survival. Her phone was slow, and typing on it was frustrating. So one afternoon, she opened her jewelry box. The gold earrings Khalid gave her on their wedding day, the silver bracelet from her mother, and quietly decided to sell them. The next day, she walked into a small electronics shop and bought a used laptop. It wasn't fancy, but it worked. That night, she opened it with shaking hands. It felt like she was opening a door to a new life. Layla began sketching ideas in a notebook, how the platform would look, how it would connect small business owners to digital tools, how it could tell the story of African vendors online. She called it Mara Connect, inspired by the Swahili word Mara, meaning quickly or immediately. It would help small vendors reach customers fast, using the power of the internet. Her nights turned into quiet marathons. While the city outside buzzed with music and laughter, Layla sat alone, learning how to build something from nothing. She designed mock-ups, created test pages, and studied marketing strategies from successful startups. She watched motivational talks until sunrise, her fingers trembling with both exhaustion and excitement. Khalid didn't understand any of it. He'd glance at her working in the dim light and shake his head. "You're wasting time," he'd say, half laughing. "Who will invest in your fantasy, Layla? You think typing on a laptop will make you rich?" She didn't reply. Words didn't matter anymore. She had learned that silence could be power too. Every time he mocked her, she worked harder. Every doubt became fuel. She told no one what she was building, not even Aisha. It was her secret project, her quiet rebellion. Weeks turned into months. The woman who once cried herself to sleep was now creating wireframes, testing social media tools, and reaching out to online forums for feedback. Her confidence was growing, piece by piece. One night, as the first version of Mara Connect finally loaded on her screen, Layla felt tears in her eyes. It wasn't perfect, far from it, but it was real. And for the first time in a long while, so was she. Layla's hands shook slightly the morning she finally launched Mara Connect. She sat in her small apartment, staring at the screen, hardly believing the website she'd built was now live. There was no big announcement, no team, no funding, just her, a second-hand laptop, and a dream that refused to die. At first, nothing happened. No signups, no emails, no calls. Days went by with silence. But Layla refused to give up. She started leaving the house every day with her laptop and a notepad, heading to a little cafe in town that had free Wi-Fi. It became her office. She'd sit at the corner table for hours, sipping one cup of coffee to stretch her time there, reaching out to local vendors on social media, and pitching her idea to anyone who would listen. Most people brushed her off. Some laughed. "Online marketing? For us," they'd say. "We just sell fruit, not phones." But Layla kept talking, kept explaining. She told them that the world was changing, that customers were scrolling more than they were walking, that even a small fruit stand could grow with the right visibility. One afternoon, while walking through Jacamba Market, she met a friendly fruit seller named Mama Grace. Layla shared her idea with her, showing how Mara Connect could help attract nearby customers through social media posts and digital ads. Mama Grace didn't fully understand it, but she liked Layla's passion. She agreed to try. Layla took pictures of Mama Grace's fruit stand, the colorful mangoes, pineapples, and avocados piled high, and posted them through Mara Connect. Within a week, Mama Grace's sales jumped. Customers started messaging her directly, asking for fruit delivery. Word spread around the market, and soon, a local tailor approached Layla for help too. Then another vendor. Then another. Every new client was a small victory. Layla celebrated quietly each night, tracking every user who signed up. She kept improving the platform, fixing bugs, learning from every mistake. In 3 months, Mara Connect had 50 active vendors, a number that felt like 100 to her. Her phone started ringing more often. Vendors were recommending her to others. Even people who had laughed at her idea were now asking how to join. Layla couldn't stop smiling. For the first time in years, she felt like she was building something that truly mattered. Khalid noticed, of course. One evening, he walked in and saw her talking to a client over a video call. She looked focused, confident, almost glowing. He leaned against the door and said with a smirk, "So you're playing business now? Cute." Layla didn't look up. "Something like that," she said calmly. He laughed, but behind his mocking tone was something else, something tighter, quieter. Jealousy. He could feel her slipping away, not physically, but in spirit. And deep down, he knew the woman he once called useless was becoming someone he couldn't control anymore. Layla could hardly believe how much things had changed in a few short months. What started as a late-night idea in her small apartment was now turning into something real. Mara Connect had grown beyond the little cafe where she used to sit for hours. Vendors were signing up faster, and her phone buzzed constantly with messages from people wanting to join. One afternoon, she got invited to a local business networking event in Westland. She almost didn't go. She felt out of place among people in suits and expensive perfume. But something inside told her to show up anyway. She wore her best outfit, printed a few flyers, and carried her old laptop in a handbag that had seen better days. At the event, she stood quietly near the back, listening to speakers talk about innovation in Kenya's digital economy. When it was time for networking, she introduced herself to anyone who would listen, explaining what Mara Connect did. Most smiled politely and moved on. But one man didn't, Mr. Kamau, a well-known local investor. He listened carefully as Layla spoke about helping small vendors build their presence online. When she showed him the website on her laptop, he nodded, asking smart questions. A week later, he called her and said he had tested the platform himself, and he was impressed. "I like what you're building," he said. "You understand your market better than most startups I've seen." I'm willing to fund you, but only if you go full-time. You'll need to build a team and lead it yourself. Layla felt her heart race. It was everything she'd worked for. I'm ready, she said without hesitation. Within weeks, her life transformed. She rented a small office in Kilimani, just one room with peeling paint and flickering lights. But to her, it felt like a palace. She hired 2 interns from the university to help her with marketing and client support. They worked long hours, eating chips and mandatsi for lunch, laughing between the stress and chaos. The numbers started climbing. More vendors, more visibility, more hope. For the first time, Layla woke up excited every morning. She had purpose, direction, and people who believed in her. But not everyone shared her joy. At home, Khalid had grown quieter and colder. He rarely asked about her day anymore. When he did, it was only to throw little jabs. One night, as she sat at the dining table answering client emails, he looked up from his phone and said flatly, "Don't get too excited. These things crash fast." Layla paused, looked at him for a moment, and smiled, not in anger but with calm confidence. "Then let's see who survives the crash," she said softly. He didn't reply. But deep down, both of them knew the truth. She was already flying higher than he ever expected. 2 years later, Layla's life looked nothing like before. Mara Connect had grown into one of Kenya's top digital marketing startups. What once began as a simple idea on an old laptop had turned into a full company with a small but powerful team. Her office now had glass doors with the Mara Connect logo printed boldly across them. Clients visited daily, small vendors, big companies, even banks wanting to collaborate. Layla had become a name people recognized. She was featured in the Daily Nation, invited to speak at conferences, and once even appeared on a morning TV show. Her parents couldn't stop smiling when they saw her on screen. She'd done it. She'd built something meaningful, something that helped others while changing her own life. But at home, things were falling apart. Khalid barely acknowledged her success. When her interviews played on TV, he'd change the channel. When people congratulated her online, he'd scroll past the comments with a tight jaw. The more she grew, the smaller he seemed to feel. He started becoming controlling, snapping at small things, accusing her of acting like a boss, even at home. Some nights he would say, "You're always working. You've changed." Layla would look up from her laptop, tired but calm. "Of course I've changed," she said one night. "I had to. You wouldn't survive being the man you were to the woman I'm becoming." The words hung heavy between them. He stared at her, unable to speak. His pride was cracking, and he didn't know how to handle it. In truth, Layla hadn't stopped caring. She had just stopped shrinking herself to make him comfortable. She had spent years building something out of nothing, and she couldn't pretend to be small anymore just to protect his ego. That night, Khalid packed a bag. He didn't say much, just moved around the house in silence, throwing clothes into a duffel. Layla watched from the doorway, her face steady. Before walking out, he muttered, "Let's see how long you last without me." Layla didn't answer. She didn't need to. The woman who once cried over his words was gone. She stood quietly as he left, then turned off the lights and sat by the window, looking out over the city she had once feared would swallow her whole. Now that same city glowed beneath her, full of opportunities she had earned on her own. And though part of her heart felt heavy, another part felt free. She whispered to herself, "I survived worse than this." The next morning, she woke up early, made her coffee, and walked into her office with a smile. Khalid's absence wasn't her ending. It was the space she finally needed to grow without limits. Layla was sitting in her office one rainy afternoon, sipping cold coffee and reviewing reports when she saw the email. At first, she thought it was spam. The subject line read, "Acquisition Interest, Maracanet." She almost deleted it, but something made her click. The message was from a global tech company based in London. They had been following Maracanet's growth across Africa and wanted to discuss a possible acquisition. Layla blinked at the screen, rereading the email over and over. Could this be real? She called her operations manager, then her lawyer, then her investor, Mr. Kamau. Within hours, meetings were set. Over the next few weeks, Layla found herself in back-to-back video calls with executives from the company, sharp suits, British accents, and serious faces. They had done their homework. They knew her numbers, her market, and her story. After several rounds of negotiation, the offer came in $97 million. Layla stared at the figure in disbelief. $97 million. The same woman who once had to sell her jewelry for a laptop was now being offered a life-changing amount for the very company she built from nothing. She felt tears sting her eyes as she signed the final agreement. When the deal was officially announced, the news spread like wildfire. Social media exploded. Layla Mwend, founder of Mara Connect, sells startup for $97 million. Her photo was everywhere, newspapers, TV interviews, podcasts, and online headlines. People called her an inspiration, a trailblazer, a role model for African women in tech. Messages poured in from old colleagues, childhood friends, and strangers who said her story gave them hope. Even her former boss reached out to congratulate her. But somewhere across town, in a small, dimly lit apartment, another person saw the news too. Khalid was scrolling through his phone when he saw Layla's name trending on Twitter. At first, he thought it was a coincidence, maybe someone else with the same name. But when he opened the article and saw her photo, smiling confidently in a sleek suit, he froze. He nearly dropped his phone. The caption below her picture read, "From jobless to multimillionaire, the rise of Layla Mwend." For a long moment, he just stared, his chest tight with something he couldn't name. Regret, disbelief, maybe both. The woman he once mocked, the one he called useless, was now one of Kenya's youngest self-made millionaires. Meanwhile, Layla sat in her new office, surrounded by her team, signing papers and shaking hands. Cameras flashed, people cheered, but her smile stayed calm. She wasn't thinking about revenge. She was thinking about the nights she almost gave up, the long hours, the rejections, the laughter she endured. Now, the same world that once doubted her was finally listening. And she didn't need to say a word. Her success said everything. A week after the $97 million deal, Layla sat in her new penthouse high above the city. The Nairobi skyline stretched out in front of her, towers glowing, traffic humming far below, the city that once broke her now shining beneath her feet. Her home was quiet, peaceful. A soft breeze came through the balcony doors as she sipped her tea and scrolled through messages, congratulations, invitations, interview requests. Life had changed overnight, but she still felt grounded. Calm. Then came a knock at the door. Layla frowned, setting her cup down. She wasn't expecting anyone. When she opened the door, her breath caught for a second. It was Khalid. He looked different, cleaner, neater, dressed sharply in a pressed shirt. The same easy smile he used to charm her years ago was back on his face, but this time it didn't reach his eyes. "Layla," he said quietly, almost hesitant. "You look amazing." Layla didn't move. She just watched him, waiting for what he would say next. He took a small step forward. "I made mistakes," he said, his voice low and soft. "I didn't see what you were becoming. I was angry, jealous, stupid. But we can fix things, right? We had something good once." For a long moment, there was silence. The city lights flickered behind her as she studied the man who had once called her useless. He looked smaller somehow, not in size but in spirit. Finally, she nodded slightly and stepped aside. "Come in." Khalid looked relieved. He entered the penthouse slowly, taking in the marble floors, the large windows, the walls filled with awards and framed photos of Layla's team. "You've really made it," he said with a forced laugh. "I always knew you were smart." Layla smiled faintly and handed him a glass of water. "No, you didn't," she said simply. He looked down, his charm slipping. "I was scared," he admitted. "You changed, and I didn't know how to handle it." Layla nodded. "I changed because I had to. Life forced me to grow." She set her glass down and looked him straight in the eyes. "You wouldn't survive being the man you were to the woman I've become." He flinched slightly, the truth hitting harder than any insult. "I'm not angry anymore, Khalid," she continued gently. "Truly, I'm not. But I don't go backward. Not after climbing this far." Khalid's eyes lingered on her for a moment, but he could see it. There was no space for him in this new chapter. He gave a weak nod, murmured something under his breath, and walked to the door. When it closed behind him, Layla stood there quietly for a moment. Then she turned back toward the window, the city lights reflecting in her eyes. She smiled to herself, not out of pride but peace. Some closures don't need tears or anger, just strength, and she had more than enough of that now. Layla's life took on a new rhythm after the sale of Maracana, one that wasn't about meetings, deals, or headlines anymore. It was about purpose. She began traveling across Africa, visiting schools, universities, and business forums. Everywhere she went, young women gathered to hear her speak. Not just about success, but about starting from nothing, about holding on when no one believes in you. She used part of her earnings to start a foundation that funded scholarships for girls who wanted to study technology, marketing, or business. She also invested in small, female-led startups, women selling handmade crafts, organic skincare, local fashion brands. "I'm not just here to inspire you," she would tell them. "I'm here to invest in you." Her words carried weight because she had lived them. Her days were filled with travel: Lagos, Accra, Kigali, Dar es Salaam, cities buzzing with ambition and creativity. In every airport lounge, in every meeting room, Layla saw reflections of her younger self. Women who had dreams but no one to believe in them. And she made it her mission to be the person she once needed. During one interview with a popular journalist, she was asked the question everyone wanted to know. "What inspired you to create Maracana?" Layla smiled, looking thoughtful for a moment. Then she laughed softly and said, "Being called useless. Sometimes disrespect is the best motivation." The clip went viral within hours. People across Africa shared it with captions like "She turned pain into power," And never underestimate a woman who's been told she can't. But beyond the fame, Layla stayed humble. She never forgot where she came from. One sunny afternoon, she flew to Mombasa to visit her parents. They met her at the airport, waving proudly as she stepped off the plane. Her mother hugged her tightly, tears in her eyes. "You've made us so proud, my daughter," she whispered. Layla smiled. "I have something to show you." She took them on a short drive to the beach. And there it was, a beautiful white house overlooking the ocean, with wide windows and palm trees swaying outside. Her father stared in disbelief. "Layla, this is yours?" She shook her head gently. "No, Baba. It's yours. Both of yours." Her mother covered her mouth, tears spilling down her cheeks. Her father stood silently for a moment before pulling Layla into a hug. "You've given us more than we ever dreamed," he said softly. As they stood together watching the waves crash against the shore, Layla felt something deeper than pride, peace. This was what success truly meant to her, freedom. The freedom to lift others, to give back, to rewrite her story, and to prove that sometimes the best revenge isn't proving someone wrong, but becoming everything they said you couldn't be. The ballroom was filled with soft music, laughter, and the sound of clinking glasses. Layla walked through the crowd at her foundation's annual charity event, wearing a simple black gown that shimmered under the lights. All around her were young women, students, small business owners, and entrepreneurs whose lives had changed because of her program. "Because of your scholarship, I started my own fashion line," one girl said, her eyes shining. Another added, "You made me believe I could do something big too." Layla smiled warmly, hugging each one, her heart full. This was what made everything worth it. Not the money, not the fame, but the faces of those who now believed in themselves because she once refused to give up. As she moved through the crowd, the lights dimmed and a short film began to play on the big screen. It showed her journey, from losing her job to building Mara Connect, to becoming a mentor to others. The audience watched in silence, moved by the story they thought they knew, but didn't fully understand. Layla's voice began to play over the video, calm and powerful. "They said I was nothing when I lost everything. But what they didn't know is that losing everything taught me to build from zero." She looked up toward the night sky through the tall glass windows of the hall, stars twinkling above the Nairobi skyline. Her voice continued softly. "Never let anyone define your worth, especially the ones too afraid to find their own." When the event ended, Layla stepped outside into the cool night air. A luxury car waited for her at the curb. She slid into the back seat, the city lights reflecting off the window. On her laptop screen, the Mara Connect logo glowed gently, a reminder of how far she'd come. She smiled to herself as the car pulled away. Success, she realized, doesn't need revenge. It speaks for itself.